Mindful reality is a body of work I have developed that falls into the category of self-inquiry. It is an awareness that validates our personal behavior and counters our critical, self-doubting mind, which can leave us feeling anxious, depressed, guilty, and ashamed. It is my hope that this education will support your confidence, calmer mind, and overall ease from emotional distress. Mostly it is designed to counter the ongoing mental chatter we all suffer from, that contains endless judgment about how we should and should not be living our life. It is my belief that the thing we all really want to know is how we are supposed to be behaving. We want to know that we're doing the right things. We feel that there is an absolute truth to how we are supposed to be living, which is why it's useful for people to believe in God, because they believe God possesses that information. This awareness practice does that. It gives us the truthful knowledge of what we should be doing with our life. There are no loopholes or exemptions to the awareness, and I will explain why. It might sound crazy for me to say what I just said, but I will back it up with ample proof. In fact, physical proof as to why we can know exactly what it is we are supposed to be doing with our life. This doesn't mean we will like the answer. Sometimes we will and sometimes we won't, as sometimes we are doing things we feel good about, and other times we aren't. Or sometimes we just feel emotionally free, while other times we feel pained, depressed, or anxious. But I can provide an understanding that perhaps you did not have before. I focus on how we define the word doing. At the heart of our desire to know how we should act, how to make the right choices, and how to be healthy and successful, is the issue of what is action. This is what my work wraps around and what ultimately provides the answer to our concerns. Action is how we spend our time, what we do in real time. So then the question is, what is the we that is the doer? We might answer, we is our person, which raises the question, what is our person? Our person is our physical self from head to toe, our body that is encased in our skin. There's no part of us that is not inside our skin. Our skull, where our brain lives, is inside our skin. And even our thoughts that activate in our brain are inside our skin. We are 100% physical organisms. We start out physically and end up physically. There's no part of us that is not cellular, molecular, atomic, or whatever goes on subatomically. We are materially composed beings existing in space and time. Being an organism means we are in a constant state of movement. The bodily systems that we think of as being involuntary, like our circulation, heartbeat, digestion, excretion, reproduction, respiration as some examples, are types of movement. Other forms of our movement we tend to think of as voluntary. This is the crux of the information I'm going to give you that will differ from how we generally think of things occurring, but will address our central concerns. The body moves by itself, no matter what it is doing. This includes every move we make and every thought we have. I will clarify why there is nothing that is voluntarily executed, apart from the fact that different types of movements are controlled by different parts of the brain. But from where we stand, all our behavior occurs on its own. Our body moves all day long. We can see this easily by looking down at our body parts. We can see big movements and little movements, small jointal adjustments by our legs, hips, and torso in the chair we're sitting in, getting up and moving into another room, pouring a cup of tea, taking a sip, bringing the cup back to the desk and sitting down, etc. You can sense that there is always a part of you moving, even if the only thing you spot is your breath. You may come to notice other things like your hand moving up to your face to scratch an itch, your head turning toward a window, or your arm moving in a conversation. These are things we don't regularly pay attention to that just occur. Investigate all the movement you can detect. Remember, every single part of your body counts as something to watch. Now see if you can identify the difference between what you tend to think of as voluntary versus involuntary, because this is what we're after. Bodies move because bones make joints with other bones, and that is the place where limbs or bones fold in relation to others. I won't get technical. It's only to highlight that because of joints, we don't move in a clump. My main objective is for you to notice your bodily movement, to understand that all of it in real time is what we are really referring to when we use the word action. What else could action be if not what we physically do in real time? The actions that go on in our mind are imaginary fantasies and speculations. The tricky part is that our focus is habitually on this inner screenplay of activity, rather than the actual activities occurring by our body in the spaces we are physically occupying. This is what makes this work a practice. Pay attention to your body moving around in space. For example, I just got up and opened a window. Observe that you are always in some movement, even if that is apparently only lying down or sitting quietly on the couch. Even if it feels like we're not doing anything, because of our use of language, our actions are really just what we call things. We define our life by making sentences. I am sitting on the couch. I am eating a bagel. I am looking at something on the computer screen, etc. We rely on this. For example, what was he doing at 3 o'clock, November 15th, 2016? He was lying down, resting on his bed. Then what we are really after is that because we are always in some action, for any given moment in time, we cannot be in a different action. This is where our mind harasses us, giving us the false impression that we could be acting otherwise than we currently are. Backing up for a moment, the fact that a body is always in some movement is the reason it is involuntary. Action is an automatic byproduct of being alive. You might say, well, that's a leap. We can still decide what we do from moment to moment, and then that would be voluntary. So let's dare ourselves to assume we don't need to make any decisions about anything. Wouldn't our bodies still always be in some movement? You might say, that's true, but I wouldn't like those movements because they wouldn't be the actions I would want to be in. So let's go with that. Whether you like what you do or not, you would still agree that if you exist, you are in some movement, even if only breathing and sleeping. Since we can't exit space and time, something must be going on with our body at all times. Because of gravity, we are always falling or being pulled onto Earth, which puts us directly on the ground, a floor, or a piece of furniture that is held up by the ground. This relationship to a surface makes the sentence I was talking about earlier. I am sitting on the couch. I am standing on the kitchen floor. I am lying on the bed. We don't have to make any decisions to be in some action because we're always, in the least, on a surface and therefore in a sentence, which is our action. This is why I say action is involuntary. It doesn't require a will. This is no different than the fact that our body is always circulating or breathing, whether we are paying attention to it or not. This is the basis of my claim that we are always doing the thing we are supposed to be doing. But I have jumped ahead. My initial statement was that we all want to know what we should be doing and how to make the correct decisions for every situation in our life. Okay, we have established that we are always in a state of action by being alive. We know this because we can see or feel it. And we also intellectually know that if we are alive, then we are physically existing all the time. It doesn't feel like this. Because we skip in and out of presence in our mind, we feel like we skip in and out of the space. But no matter how lost in thought or spaced out we are, we're always in a place, our weight giving itself to a surface. Though we know this to be true, Perceptually, we are typically unaware of it. Unless somebody brings our attention to it for the moment and we say, yes, of course, I'm sitting here on the couch, and of course I have continually existed from the moment I was conceived until this point in time. Thus far, I have explained why it is that we are always doing something. But the greater issue is, how can it be that all our decisions are made for us involuntarily and that we are always doing the right thing? This has to do with more physical laws, gravity being the first, which basically dictate that we cannot be in two places at once, divide or multiply ourselves, or be in the future before it is the future. If we are always somewhere, and therefore in an action, what makes it the right action? It is precisely because the body is a singular entity that can only be in one place at a time. On October 10, 2018, at 2:55 and 31 seconds, for example, my body/person will be in a specific place in action, which means it will not be able to be in some other place and action during that time. Remember that whether you're paying attention to yourself or not, you are still in some action. If we can't leave the body we're in, that means that no other action is physically possible for any moment in time. If no other action is physically possible, then the action a body is engaged in is the only one physically possible. If it is the only action physically possible, that means it is, by default, the correct one. It's as simple as that. The mind will fight against this recognition until its dying day because that is how we are wired. Nevertheless, there is no physical possibility for a body to not be where it is. And just the fact that it's alive denotes some activity. The answer to the puzzle is that the state of existence is synonymous with the state of action. They are one and the same. Consequently, all we ever need in order to know we are doing the right thing is to know we are alive. If we want a more specific clarification of what we should be doing in a given moment, we can look down and see the exact movements we are in. Then, regardless of whatever situation we're concerned about, we can confirm that the physical activity our body is engaged in is the appropriate action for that situation. Our proof is that we can see ourselves in the space in relation to other objects with which we interact. A pen, computer, another person, steering wheel, bag of groceries, piece of food, car pedal, cup of coffee, etc. This is no different than scientists knowing, through observation, that internal organs exist and do what they do. Some behavior is perceived from the inside, while other behavior is perceived from the outside. I recognize how outrageous this sounds unless you are someone who is already steeped in this kind of practice. It is humbling because it shows our lack of options, the limitations we have in our personal capabilities. But it also demonstrates that our behavior is automatic, which means we get it for free. Actions and right choices are guaranteed. Can you imagine such a thing? That doing the right thing is a guaranteed process of being alive? Or I should say of being born? It is insane to think it is that easy, as we spend so much time fearing, doubting, and worrying about how to act appropriately.